So originally I thought today was going to be a very boring and relaxing day, but man was I wrong, because we got a crap ton of Touken Ranbu cards to go over, as well as a new type of over trigger, and on top of that we also got the new Monster Strike mechanic, which might or might not come to the English format. Stand up! Vanguard! Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another Cardfight update, and as said in the intro, we got a lot of new cards to talk about, so we're gonna skip the intro talk and head straight into these new cards to not make this video longer than it should be. So, we're going to begin with all the Touken Ranbu cards because we got a lot of new Touken Ranbu cards revealed to us, and we first start off with the cards that we got for the Card of the Day reveals. And there we find this Grade 1, which is Kenshin Kagemitsu. And Kagemitsu has the ability Auto Rigor Circle. At the end of the battle, this unit boosted, cost count +1, and put this unit into your soul, draw a card, choose one of your units, and it gets power +2k until the end of turn. So, it's a fine draw engine that can also generate you soul. The 2k power might or might not come up. I don't think it's gonna be that instrumental, but who knows, maybe this has some nice synergy with other cards that we see in the future. At the very least, it's a generic draw engine that can help the deck. Now, another Grade 1 that we saw on the same day is this Grade 1, Hakusan Yoshimitsu, and Hakusan is basically the new perfect guard that can potentially be used without needing to discard. I don't have to explain this, we know about this. Now, next up we got two cards which are a unique duo, and these might do something, but I don't think they're gonna be as impactful, as we've got this Grade 2, Juizumaru, and Juizumaru has the ability continues on Rearguard Circle and Guardian Circle. If Higakiri is on the front row Rearguard Circle or Guardian Circle, this unit gets power +5k and shield +5k, effective on opponent's turn as well. So if you have the other Grade 2, he becomes a passive 15k attacker, and potentially 10k shield that can also substitute as an interceptor. Now, is this a lot of value? As a shield unit, it can actually be quite nice, as it means you have a solid amount of shield value in your deck, but because it's locked behind a specific unit that you need to have on the field as well, it can happen that in a lot of the time it's just a vanilla card, and even if the unit is on the board, it's just an extra bit of power and shield. It's not that instrumental in the value that you gain. And if we're looking at the other card, then yeah, it's basically the same type of deal that we're going to get, because the other card is yet again another Grade 2, which is of course Higakiri, and Higakiri has the exact same skill, which is continuous on Rearguard and Guardian Circle. If Juizumaru is on the front of Rearguard Circle or Guardian Circle, this unit gets power +5k and shield +5k. So same deal, same thing. Like, it's fine to have this extra raw stat on the board, but I don't think it's going to be that instrumental, as it's not that great. Now, as for the reveals that we've got during this week's live stream, we saw the second right line for Touken Ranbu, and of course when we are going to discuss a right line, we see the generic starter, and in this case that is Kanesada, and Kanesada has the, of course, the standard right starter ability, so we don't have to explain this. Now, if we go up the grade for the right line, we have the Grade 1, which is Kanesada Santo, and Kanesada Santo has the ability Auto. When this unit is rode upon by Kanesada Toku, choose one of your Vanguards and it gets power +10k until the end of turn. This is actually a pretty decent skill, because that means if you ride your Grade 2, your Vanguard becomes a 20k beater. So you can be a bit more aggressive, as even if they get a defensive trigger, your Vanguard can still hit even without a booster. This is somewhat similar to Dragon Empire with Verena being able to become 20k, or with the Grade 2 of the right line being a 12k attacker with an 8k booster behind is also a 20k column. So we are entering the same amount of numbers, but we don't even need a booster to reach those numbers or be concerned with the 2-card combo with the overdress mechanic. So that's actually pretty decent. And of course, within the same vein, it also has stability. Continues a Rearguard Circle. During your turn, this unit gets power +2k. That's not great. Yes, it's a 10k attacker, but I don't think it's going to be as instrumental or as good for the build, but we have to wait and see what the main gimmick is going to be for Touken Ranbu if we see more support. Now, of course, if we go up to the Grade 2, we see Kanesada Toku. Kanesada Toku has the ability Auto. When this unit is rode upon by Kanesada Kivame, soul charge 1, choose one of your Vanguards, and it gets power +5k until the end of turn. So instead of giving 10k power to your new unit, it only gives 5k, and it's just one soul. Personally, I think it would have been better if it was the other way around, that the Grade 2 gains another 5k when it's rode upon the Grade 1, and then the Grade 3, your main Vanguard, gets the extra 10k power, and you're definitely going to see that in a moment once we look at the Grade 3. So I think this skill is kind of iffy, but still, it's free power and a free soul if you need it, so it's fine. And of course, it has the other ability, continues a Rigid Circle. During a turn, this unit gets power plus 2k. This is not great, it's not going to be useful, so it's probably going to be restricted to only a right line type of deal. Now, if we go to the grade 3 of the right line, we see Kanesada Kivame, and Kanesada Kivame has the ability, act on Vanguard Circle once a turn, cost Soul Blast 1, rest any number of your rearguards. For each unit rest by this unit's cost, this unit gets power plus 5k until the end of turn. So you can rest your rearguards to gain an extra bit of power. That's fine and all. I don't know how much value you're gonna find in this, because it means you're sacrificing attacks or value on the board. Sure, you can just call units down from your hand and then replace them again if you need to, but this doesn't really look that great. Of course, this is just a right line, so we might see support in the main set that synergize with this, and we're gonna talk about a card in this video that does synergize with this a little bit. So this is fine, but then also it has the ability to continue a Vanguard Circle. During the battle this unit attacked, if this unit's power is 30k or greater, when your opponent would call cards from your hand to the Guardian Circle, they must call 2 or more at the same time. The Battle Dory effect on a Dimension Police restriction. Now, this is the reason why I honestly would have thought it would be smarter for the grade 2 to give 10k instead of 5k, because that means it only needs like one pump, or maybe just a booster is enough. But now with only 5k, that means that you at least need to give one 5k power pump to this Vanguard unit to at least get to that 30k threshold. So that means you need to use its first ability and rest one rearguard. Now, how good is this going to be? I think so far it's fine. Like, you can have a massive beater with a Battle Door effect, thus negating Sentinels to some extent. But even as a main Vanguard unit, I find this kind of but who knows, maybe we see more support around it that actually can capitalize on this unit's abilities. Now, we also got a couple of triple Rs revealed to us, and these triple Rs are kind of interesting, and we start off with this grade 2 triple R, which is Mikuzuki Munichika, and Munichika has the ability Auto Rigid Circle once a turn. When this unit attacks, perform all of the effects below according to the number of cards in your damage zone. 3 or more, aka Shinken Hisatsu. During this turn, this unit gets power plus 5k. 4 or more, aka Limit Break, look at the top card of your deck and put it in the top or bottom of your deck. 5 or more, aka Ultimate Break, cost Counter plus 1 and Soul plus 1, stand this unit. So we potentially have a 15k attacker that can check the top of your deck or manipulate the top of your deck, aka Oracle Think Tank effect, and could also then restand itself. And keep in mind, the 5k power is until the end of the turn, so both attacks will attain the extra 5k power. And also, again, then keep in mind, it's a once per turn skill, so if you attack again, no, you cannot resolve it again. Overall, this is a very interesting card because the longer the game progresses, the stronger and stronger this card gets. And even if you're still stuck at 4 damage, you get the extra 5k power and the deck manipulation for free. That's actually pretty good turn after turn. Usually you need to pay resource to even allow you to manipulate the top deck. Even when Oracle Think Tank was a thing, they still need to pay at least Counterblast or Soul Blast to do this turn after turn. This is actually a pretty strong card that is really generically flexible in whatever strategy you might play. But we also got another grade 2, which is Odenta Mitsuyo. And Odenta Mitsuyo has the ability Auto Rigid Circle. When this unit attack hits, if you Persona Roll this turn, cost Counterblast 1, and here's the kicker, and heal 1 damage from your damage zone. It's an on-hit heal that's free, because you Counterblast 1 and then you immediately heal the damage that you just Counterblasted. So it's free. Now, of course, there are some restrictions behind this card. It's an on-hit, and it needs to be Persona ridden. Now, keep in mind, the on-hit doesn't specify Vanguard, so you could just attack into a rearguard. So if you can power up this unit good enough that it's almost not worth it to guard the rearguard, you can just slam into a rearguard with a 60k attack, and either they need to waste a lot of shield value, or they lose the rearguard and you heal a card, which honestly is also a bad trade. And yes, you need a Persona Ride, but that also comes in favor of this card, because if you Persona Ride, that it means that this card is that much stronger. Is this going to be a staple card for every Touken Ranbu deck? Probably not, because the Persona Ride condition, the clause on it is kind of inconsistent, and needing to hit is probably the biggest target or the block for your opponent. But then again, it can be a nice distraction for your opponent, because they're probably going to use all the resource to get this card up the field, or going to use all the resource to block this attack whatever means necessary. So this could be a very interesting card to play with depending on what type of Touken Ranbu strategy you're gonna go with. Now another grade 2 triple R that we've got is Juizumaru Sunetsugu. And Sunetsugu has the ability act on Vanguard circle once a turn, cost counter +1, rest this and one of your other units, choose one of your opponent's units and it gets power -5k until the end of that turn. If you Persona roll this turn, stand all of your rear guards. So this allows you to then resend your entire board, and this is somewhat of a synergy between the grade 3 right liner we just talked about that can rest its own units to give itself power. Now, this does force you to rest 2 other units, so if you already rested 4 units with your Vanguard, then you cannot activate the skill unless you call more units to the field. So you need to be a bit careful. And then you also need to ask yourself, is it worth it to minus your opponent's 5k power for 1 counterblast? Honestly, I think it does, because it gives 5k power to every single attack that you're going to do that turn, as minusing 5k power to your opponent's Vanguard is the same as a front row power buff or a passive power buff, just like Persona Ride. So it can definitely be worth it, and if you can restand your entire board in the process, it's definitely worth it in my opinion. So it's an interesting tech choice that depends on what type of build you're gonna go with, but again, we need to see more cards to actually understand the value behind these skills. Now for the final triple R grade 2 that we saw today, we have Onimaru Kunitsuna, and Kunitsuna has the ability Auto Vanguard Circle. When this unit attacks, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, cost counter +1 and soul +1, and until the end of the battle, this unit gets power +5k, critical +1, and at the end of the battle, put this unit on the bottom of your deck. Now, it's okay. I think it's a bit overcosted for gaining 5k and a critical for counter soul blast. I don't like this type of effect, and it's also restricted that your opponent needs to be grade 3 or greater, and then you lose the unit at the bottom of your deck. Will there be some synergy with this? I have no clue. We haven't seen enough cards to understand the value behind this card. It's kind of whatever in my book. But now we get to a very interesting card, because we saw the overtrigger for Touken Ranbu. And the overtrigger for Touken Ranbu is Kashu Kiyomitsu Shinken Hisatsu. And its additional overtrigger effect is, during this turn, all your units get critical +1. Now, this isn't the most strongest effect that we've seen on overtriggers, but the interesting thing is that this is a passive buff. So if you're going to call new units mid-battle, it still will apply, which is interesting. Will it affect something? We don't know. We haven't seen enough cards to justify this effect to some degree. But you might have noticed something else on the card. There's more text here. And you might have noticed that this overtrigger doesn't have shield. It doesn't have the 50k shield that we've seen on all the other overtriggers. That's because this, and I kid you not, is a trigger order. Yes, it's a new type of order as well as a new type of trigger, because it has the effect, when played, resolve this effect played as an order, so you use it like a normal order, choose one of your Vanguards, and it gets critical +1 until the end of turn. And if you have 5 or more cards in your damage zone, all your units get power +10k. So it's an overtrigger that will basically resolve again, or will resolve no matter what, even if you need to draw it. Because if you drive check it, you get the effect, which is critical +1 on all your units. If you damage check it, sure, it's an overtrigger, but you don't get the active effect. But then if you draw it, which in most cases that means it's a dead card, but it's 50k shield, in this case, don't worry, you can then use it, and it gives then the critical to your Vanguard and 10k power to potentially your entire board if you have enough damage. This is a very interesting design for overtriggers, because this can be a new way to design future overtriggers. Will this mean that we're gonna see another wave of overtriggers for the nations, but then in a trigger order version? Who knows? I have no clue. This is what we got for Touken Ranbu. I'm curious if we're going to see this more for other overtriggers. Interesting enough, this isn't the only version of this overtrigger, because there's going to be a box topper promo series that you're going to see here, which is basically different art versions of the overtriggers. They also do have different names, but they do the exact same thing. So it's the same overtrigger, but with a different unit on top. And on top of that, they also have the Touken Ranbu secret rare versions, and I assume that those are going to be in the set. So the overtriggers themselves are going to be a box topper in each box, and then the high rarity version is probably something you can pull in the set itself. Now, On the notion of promos, there will also be a promo pack included in every single box, and we've seen some of the cards in those promo packs itself. So let's go over those particular cards. And we start off with the grade 3, which is Ochidori Jumonji. And it has the ability Auto Rigid Circle. When its unit attacks, cost counterblast 1, activate one of the following effects. Until the end of the battle, this unit gets power plus 5k. Until the end of the battle, your opponent cannot intercept, or choose an opponent's rearguard in the same column as this unit being attacked and retire it. It's an interesting card because it's pretty flexible, but the value behind the counterblast is kind of iffy. Like the 5k power, I don't like it. Blocking your opponent for intercepting can be useful, but it's very specific. Now the retire, that's actually pretty interesting because you can remove the booster behind your opponent's Vanguard, or you can attack into a column and you can hit the rearguard in front and then retire the rearguard in the back. That is probably the most value behind this card, but it's on a grade 3, so I don't know if it's worth it enough to actually play it, but interesting design nonetheless. Now there's also a grade 2, which is Murakumogo, and it has the ability Act from Drop Zone, cost counterblast 1, choose one of the following effects. If Samidare Go is on your rearguard circle, call this card to an open rearguard circle. If you have Samidare Go in your soul, put this card into your soul and soul charge 1. I have no clue what this card actually does, or how it works, because we haven't seen Samidare Go. So, I don't know what the interaction is. It's interesting that it works from the drop zone, so either we can get two soul for a counterblast, or we get another unit on the rearguard circle for a counterblast. I think the calling to the field is pretty good. 2 soul, not so much, but again, we need to see the other card to understand at least the inherent value between these two, and then we need to see more cards to see if there's actual strategy that can facilitate these cards. Now, the first card of this promo pack that we saw is Ichimonji Norimuna, and Norimuna has the ability continuous, back row rearguard circle. During your turn, if you have 4 more units, this unit gets a boost and power plus 5k. You need to have 2 other rearguards on the field, and it's a 15k booster, which is fine. It's not the greatest card, but it's at least easier to gain the value of this particular card. Now for the final promo card for Touken Ranbu, as well as the final Touken Ranbu card that we saw today, we have Hanjin. And Hanjin has the ability Auto Rearguard Circle. When your opponent's back row rearguard is retired during your turn, put this unit into your soul, choose one of your units, and it gets power plus 10k until the end of that turn. Now this is actually pretty interesting because we already saw some retire abilities within Touken Ranbu. We had the grade 3 that can attack into a unit and then retire the back row unit. That then synergizes with this particular card, and you can give the unit that's now attacking the front row unit another 10k power because they activate at the same time, which is a nice synergy that you can create between these units. So overall, there is some value behind this card, but we have to see more reveals to see if it's actually good enough to facilitate a slot in our decks. And that's all the cards that we've got for Touken Ranbu. But we also have the new mechanic for Monster Strike. And you might ask yourself, why am I even covering this Monster Strike information? Because we don't know if we ever going to get this collab, unlike Touken Ranbu, which looks to be more plausible. The reason why I still want to cover this is, for one, the mechanic is very unique and very interesting, but for two, the official Bushiroad Twitter, the English version, so the global version of the company, tweeted out the translation of the new mechanic for Monster Strike. Now, does this confirm that we're gonna get the set in English? No, it doesn't. But it makes it a lot more plausible that we might get it in the English format. So I'm more hopeful now. I'm not saying it's 100% confirmed. I'm at least saying it's more likely. And therefore, I have more reason to actually cover this information. Now, to understand this new mechanic, we need to first take a look at their new Grade 0 starter card, which is Golden Egg. And Golden Egg has the ability, and no, it's not the standard Vanguard ability, it has the ability, although on Vanguard Circle, when you stand up, you become a striker. When you become a striker, play a Gacha Reader from your right deck onto the order zone and add 1 monster box to your hand. So we have a couple things here that needs to be explained. So first off, what's a Gacha Reader and why is it in our right deck? The Gacha Reader is something that we saw last week, which is the dragon and the main thing that enables this whole mechanic. And the reason why this is in your right deck is because the right deck for the Monster Strike variant is a little bit different. Because unlike the usual right deck that has a grade 0, grade 1, grade 2, and grade 3, the Monster Strike right deck will contain those particular cards plus the Gacha Reader card as well. So their right deck is 5 cards instead of the usual 4 cards. So that's one thing. So the moment you stand up the Vanguard, you immediately grab this Gacha Reader from your right deck and put it onto the order zone on the field. Now, the second thing that we see is we add 1 monster block to our hand. This is the other part of the unique mechanic of Monster Strike. This is a card that's outside of your main deck, and the moment that you generate it, you place it onto the field, or in this case it stays into your hand, but I think you should actually place it onto the field. Now, what this monster box allow you to do is basically swap any card that's in the monster block with a card in your hand, but they need to be the same grade, and you can only do this once a turn. So let's say, for example, there's a grade 2 in your monster box and you want to have it in your hand. You can take a grade 2 from your hand, put it into the monster box, and grab that particular grade 2 that you want and add it to your hand. That's effectively what it is. But now you can ask yourself the question, how do I even put cards into the monster box in the first place? This is where the Gacha Reader comes into play, and this is where the main core of the whole gimmick lies. Because this order card has the effect, act order zone, cost, rest this card, put the top card of your deck face up to your monster box. So this is the way how you load up your monster box with multiple cards. So every single turn you can rest it and then put another card from your deck into the monster box and keep going until you see a card that you need. This is effectively pulling a gacha and hope that you get something that you want. It's a single ticket gacha. And the reason why I say single ticket gacha is because of the other effect that it has. Because it also has act order zone once a fight. If yours and your opponent's Vanguard are grade 3 or greater, cost counterblast 2, rest this card, put the top 10 cards from your deck face up to your monster box, then choose up to 3 cards in your monster box and call them to the rearguard circle. So you literally are doing a 10 pull here. This is pretty interesting design-wise, because it means that what you can do is just immediately load up on this thing and go for the high roll and hope that there are 3 good cards in the top 10 and then call them to the field, and the rest of the cards can stay in the monster box and you can swap them one at a time every single turn. Or what you can also do is use the first effect, used a couple of times, load up the monster box with actual good cards so that you know at least there's 2 good cards in the monster box that I want to call to the field, and then use the 10 pull to hopefully see 1 more good card and then call him to the field. Now, how well this will synergize with the mechanic of Monster Strike, we don't know. There might be cards that activate if they're placed from the gacha, from the monster box onto the field instead of from hand. Now, how you could play around this is basically load up the monster box with multiple cards, and then those cards, and if you draw those cards, you can actually put them into the monster box and wait until you do the whole 10 pulls. There are a lot of interesting things that can come into play, but it's all pure speculation on how they're gonna build upon this mechanic. Overall, it's a very interesting take on gacha, and this literally solidifies that Gold Paladin was Vanguard's original gacha clan, because it's literally Gold Paladin with extra steps. But that then also concludes every single thing that we need to talk about today, because that was a lot in terms of the TCG reveals. Like, we haven't really seen anything from Monster Strike. We just now know about the main core mechanic, the core gimmick, which is kind of interesting. I'm digging this a lot, but now I want to see the actual cards around it that will justify this mechanic and how they can manipulate and work around it and basically get the most value out of it. I'm very curious on how they're gonna do this and what type of approach they're gonna take. And on top of that, we saw a lot of Touken Ranbu cards, but interesting enough, even though we saw a lot of Touken Ranbu cards, it still doesn't really tell us how the decks are going to be played. We saw a lot of individual islands of things that they can do, but we haven't really seen an overarching mechanic or an overarching game plan that then tells us, this is the direction I want to take, at least for one of the decks. We still haven't really seen that. Yes, we saw 2 ride lines, but they're a bit too generic to give us more of a hook into the direction they want to take the whole Touken Ranbu clan or nation or whatever you want to call it. So we still have to wait and see until more support or more card releases until we can actually start to understand the actual value behind the individual cards. But overall, that's about everything for me today. Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think of these new cards for Touken Ranbu, as well as the gacha mechanic for Monster Strike. What do you think of the monster box, the Gacha Reader, as well as the golden egg thing? Let me know in the comments down below all your thoughts. on these cards. As always, this video has been brought to you by our lovely Patreons over at patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a Patreon today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Timeleap, and I see you guys in the next one!